All right, I would like to welcome you to the first official virtual Medina County Safety Council meeting. My name is Stephanie Mueller, and I am the Membership and Events Coordinator for the Greater Medina Chamber of Commerce, as well as the coordinator for the Medina County Safety Council. So we are super excited to be able to offer you a little bit of a different option. We are excited that so many of you have decided to join us today. So a couple housekeeping rules just before we get started. I'm going to ask that you keep your microphones on mute so that we can keep down some of the background noise so that you can hear those of us that will be presenting. I'm also going to ask you to turn off the video on your camera. That will help to keep the bandwidth down so that you're able to see those of us that are presenting. In the top right corner of your screen, if you click on where it says gallery view, it should come up with just, right now it should just be my face that's showing there. That will allow you to see whoever the presenter is with the slides behind you as well. There is a chat box. We encourage you to put comments, questions into the chat box. If you have questions as we go, please feel free to type them in there. I will be moderating that and can help answer those questions and pass them along to Carrie as well if there's any information. So the chat box is there for you to ask those questions or share any comments as we go today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Carrie Gray.
Yay, hello, I'm so excited. It's weird because I can't see you smiling and waving, but I know you're doing that in the background. So very excited. We're going to try something a little different here. We're going to actually do the update and stuff that I would normally talk about at the beginning. We're going to do that at the end. So you can see the agenda up here. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that we've been doing. We're going to talk about awards briefly. And then instead of doing a big like 30, 45-minute presentation, we're going to just do a short little 10-15 minute presentation, and we're going to talk about heat stress, which, you know, maybe it's kind of nice and cool today, but by the end of this afternoon and definitely into this weekend, it's going to be a topic that we're going to all be focused on. We'll do Q&A, and then we will do the updates, and we'll stop from there. So I'm going to turn it back over to Stephanie to talk about all the fun stuff that she has been able to get out a little bit and help some of those in our community.
Thanks, Carrie. So as Carrie mentioned, we have been kind of working behind the scenes. The Medina County Safety Council, as well as the steering committee, has been working behind the scenes. Certainly everybody understands the challenging times that we've experienced over the past couple of months. We had a great suggestion from one of our steering committee members, Susan, had said that there was some funds that we had left over from coming up on the end of this year. And she suggested that maybe we should reach out to some of the nonprofits in the Medina County area and do something for them. And we were trying to think of things that they might need given the times that were upon us. So we decided to make a couple different donations to allow our funds to touch as many as we possibly could within Medina County, but certainly keeping to the Safety Council's mission. So the first donation that we decided to make was $1,000 towards the Medina County Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. We originally intended on buying PPE for them to help disseminate throughout the county, but realizing the challenge of securing it and securing the PPE that was the medical grade that we needed or they needed, we realized that it just wasn't going to be possible. So in speaking with Christine Fazio, who is the director of the EMA, she let us know that they are looking to purchase a device that will allow them to disinfect the police cars, fire trucks, EMS vehicles for the county. And this is a pretty pricey purchase for them. So they were actually finding donations from organizations throughout the Medina County area. And so I was able to go out, I believe this was toward the end of April, just as kind of things were allowing us to maybe get out a little bit to be able to present Christine with that $1,000 check. And then you can see on the left that the Medina County Fire Chiefs Association had sent us a thank you note for this. I believe they're close to securing the amount. It's a $27,000 machine but it will certainly be able to be used for many years to come and really help to keep those vehicles safe for the public and for certainly those safety officials. The second donation was a $1,000 donation to Feeding Medina County. So you can certainly imagine during this time the challenge of the people who maybe were never food insecure now finding themselves challenged as to where their next meal was coming from. And knowing that Feeding Medina County does amazing work for this community day in and day out, year after year, we contacted them to find out if there was a need given the increased amount of people that were looking for donations, and there certainly was. So in addition to them still providing over 1,000 weekender bags to students, which they continue to do week in and week out, even with the schools being homeschooled for a while and into the summer. And then they provide food once a month for the senior population. They also would provide once a month food distributions at the fairgrounds. Well, they would get maybe 100 people every month. Over the last couple of months, those donations ended up being an every other week type of event. And those went from maybe 100 families being served to over 250 families being served every week. So they were very much appreciating our $1,000 donation. It really helped them to continue to be able to provide food for those students, for the seniors, and then certainly for those that were finding themselves in need and not being able to find those supplies. And then finally, we purchased from a local Medina company, Temper Sealy, 200 face coverings, and you can see the picture here, the red ones. Actually, ours ended up being white, but these are the first ones that we had gotten. And so we decided that we wanted to contact some of the nonprofits in Medina County to help them, whether it was to be able to provide those masks for their employees, their clients, their customers, their volunteers. And so we are still actually distributing these because of some of the nonprofits at first were not working with the public or were working from home. We are still finding ways to get these out into the community. So we have made donations to the Medina County Board of DD, as well as Hope Recovery Community. They are using these for their staff, certainly for their clients that they are working with on a daily, weekly basis as well. So we were able to share this information to you through an email, as well as to get some social media coverage for it. But we felt as a group that it was kind of our civic duty to be able to help those that were maybe less fortunate during this time. So I will send it back to Carrie, who is going to talk about the 2019-2020 Safety Awards.
Okay, so you know that normally we would have a meeting with a big speaker, and today you're just stuck with me. But we would have all of these framed and set on tons of tables across the whole big giant room. But obviously we're not doing that today. What we're going to do is these are going to be mailed out to individual companies. Stephanie in the chamber, they do have those, and they're going to send those out to everybody. But what we wanted to do is, I'm not going to read names because we normally would not read names. But what we're going to do is, if I can get the slides to advance, just kind of go through what the awards mean, just a reminder. The first award, and you can see there are a lot that got this award. This is the 100% award, and the 100% award has two full slides of that many companies, and it's when an employer works an entire calendar year without an injury or illness resulting in a day away from work. So there is a lot on that list, which is good. And like I said, I'm not going to read all the names, but this whole presentation will be sent out to everybody after this. So know that that is there and ready to go. The next one is the group award, and the group award, last year, 2 years ago, we spent some time putting everybody in groups based on what they did, and the group award is for the employer with the lowest incident rate in each group. So like all the schools are together, and certain types of manufacturing are together, and the nonprofits and the healthcare and all those transportation, that sort of thing. So those are all together, and that's the lowest incident rate in that group itself. The next award I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, the special award. And the special award is for employers that accumulate 500,000 hours in at least 6 months without an injury or illness resulting in a day away from work. So you'll see, you know, a lot of folks got more than one award, so their name is going to show up on different slides. And then the last one is the Achievement Award, and this is the award where an employer from year over year decreases their incident rate. And remember, all of this comes from your OSHA log. Okay, now I'm like, am I doing that, Stephanie, or are you? We're jumping slides.
Sorry, that's me.
Okay, that was you? Okay, I was like, I didn't even touch it. Okay.
Sorry.
That's what you do when we're sharing stuff, right? That makes it harder, so we're good. So this one is the 25% reduction, and you can see there's a lot of names. And like I said before, often you'll get an award that is a multi-award, and it'll have different ones. So just know that you're going to be getting those in the mail, and you'll be able to proudly display those, but they're just going to come to you a little bit different than they had in past years. So with that being said, I'm going to talk for 10, maybe 15 minutes, if you can believe I can talk that short of time. Okay. About heat stress, and it is one of these topics that we seem to forget about until it's almost too late. And so we start talking about heat stress sometimes when it's already really hot. And I will tell you, in our area, as recent as within the last couple of years, we have had a couple heat stress related fatalities. And one that is a company that I work with more in the Akron area. But one of them is they had a HVAC guy in a just residential attic, and it was a really hot day. Temperatures were reading about 120, 130 degrees up there. The individual was up in the attic, and he passed away just from heat exposure. A lot of times with heat, and you'll see there's a lot of factors that play into it, but this is a very real issue, and it's something that we have to make sure that we're diligent about as summer and the hotter weather rolls around. The main factors when we're looking at heat, a lot of times you just think it's temperature, but obviously it's more than temperature. We're dealing with humidity. We're dealing with radiant heat, which would be like direct sun or direct heat, or even if you have equipment in your facility that let off a lot of heat. And then you're also factoring in air velocity with that. So you have to make sure that you're taking into account all of those issues. Then there's issues dealing with the people. And the big one that we don't necessarily think of, but is a really big issue, especially in Ohio, is the second one there. So all the physical fitness and age and weight of the individual makes a difference, but it's the acclimatization, of course I can't say that, that really does have a big impact. And so in Ohio, especially, you know, we'll have, I think it was like 54, 56 last night, and then it'll be 80 by the end of the afternoon. By this weekend, it'll be like 60s at night and 90s during the day. And so our bodies don't get time to acclimate to the heat itself. You actually often see less heat-related injuries and illnesses in some of the warmer climates because it is hot all the time, and they're just used to it, and their bodies are used to it, and they know how to deal with it. So we have to especially be diligent about that. If folks are users of alcohol or drugs, that's going to increase their risk, different medical conditions, and believe it or not, prior heat injury. So if you have an employee that has had a heat injury or illness, and we'll talk through what those are real quick, but if they've had one of those in the past, they're going to be a lot more likely to have that again or even worse in the future. So it's good to know your folks, not just for heat and heat stress, but it's good to know your folks and what kind of past and history they've had in dealing with hot temperatures. And then finally, the clothing, the things that we're wearing, those can make a big difference in how our body can release the heat and how we can deal with that. So some of the heat disorders and health effects, we're going to talk through each of these again pretty briefly. You're going to get these slides. So if you want to, and hopefully you do this kind of training with your folks, these slides are going to be something that you can use, and it's going to have all the information to, you know, let your folks know about it. Another thing with heat, and when we talk about training, it's really important to do training because you may not realize you're in a heat distress or potential for illness. But other folks are going to notice that maybe you're acting a little more odd than normal, or you're just not acting like yourself, and that's a big sign and symptom. So starting with heat rash. Okay. Starting with heat rash, it is the most common. A lot of times folks don't even notice, but it's prickly. It's a manifestation or a rash that comes when you can't evaporate sweat from the skin and your sweat ducts become plugged. So prevention, the right kind of clothes, make sure you're showering, make sure you're washing the stuff, using the right kind of soaps. Being cool at night is a big part of acclimatization as well, to give your body the chance, your core temperature to drop. So that's a big deal, and keeping your skin clean and dry. The next one is heat cramps, and this one you may see a little bit more often. Beyond the symptoms of the cramps themselves, and you can get severe cramps in your legs or your stomach, there can be other symptoms, and it still kind of falls in the heat cramp category. It can be, you can notice things like shriveled skin, sunken eyes, dry mouth, and what they say with dehydration, if you are thirsty, it's probably already too late. You're already dehydrated, so you don't even want to get to that being thirsty amount. So, obviously it can lead to fainting, dizziness, weakness, profuse sweating, headaches, things like that. If you are dehydrated, you'll often have a headache. And then a lot of this is just increasing fluid intake. I use caution. It's not like, for those of us that are a little bit older, the old days of salt tablets, obviously those are not recommended anymore. But a lot of times what you'll see folks do is use some sort of electrolyte drink, like a Gatorade or a Powerade or a Squincher or something like that. And those are okay in moderation. So you don't want to be drinking nothing but Gatorade or Powerade or Squincher. Water should be primarily what you're drinking, and you don't need Gatorade all day long. 1 or 2 at the most a day is probably more than enough, but you want to make sure you're drinking lots of water. And then moving people from the area, putting them in a cool place, letting them rest. Now, after that, we get into the ones that are a lot more serious. So you have heat exhaustion, and heat exhaustion is really that some of those heat cramp ones, but just elevated to the next level. So you're looking at profuse sweating, dizziness, rapid pulse, thirst, loss of appetite, can be nausea, vomiting, obviously fainting. And fainting kind of goes into the next one as well. So if something like that happens, you're looking at doing some first aid very quickly, very rapidly, because you certainly don't want to go into heat stroke. And I could go back one slide. So heat exhaustion, our treatments, we want to get to the shade, we want to cool off. You can get cool towels or ice, put them, under the armpits and the back of the neck, the groin area, just to get folks to cool down. Don't give anybody, obviously you learn in first aid, don't give anybody anything that's unconscious, anything to drink. Don't give them anything with caffeine. If they are conscious, no alcohol, obviously, and just make sure that they're getting water. And they're probably, if they're in this phase, probably should go to the ER and get checked out, possibly get an IV. But if it's untreated and you're not dealing with these things to bring the core body temperature down, that's where you get into heat stroke. And so heat stroke is life-threatening. This is, it's not something you want to mess around with. You got to deal with this really quickly. You got to call 911. It is truly a medical emergency. And so one of the things that you see is people will stop sweating. So if it's really hot outside and you're noticing they're kind of like, maybe blue looking or hot and flushed, but they are not sweating, that is a huge sign of heat stroke. Obviously you're going to call 911 before you start doing anything, but then you're also looking at the cold compresses or the wet sheets or the fans, get them in a cooler area, use the ice packs, head, neck, groin, seek medical attention immediately. So you do not want to mess around with that. So like I said, the biggest things you want to know is making sure folks understand this, is because you may not be out there, whether it's on the floor, out in the field, or, it could just be people at home, and you may not be with them, so you want them to be trained and knowledgeable. So running through a couple different solutions, just like when we look at solving or dealing with any kind of safety issue, we use the hierarchy of control. And so the first thing we always look at is engineering controls. So if you remember at the very beginning, we talked about the 4 factors of heat, and it's not just the ambient temperature. You want to look at, can you reduce or deal with any of those? So it could be just general ventilation and moving the air, and that's going to make you feel cooler, and it's going to help you get the sweat to evaporate off your skin, which is going to make you cooler. Obviously, we would love it if we could air condition all of our facilities, but that's not an option, not something we can go to. But you want to make sure, if at all possible, you have areas that your folks can go into and cool down, and like break rooms and things like that, that they're going to be given the opportunity to cool down and get their core body temperature down a little bit. We want to look at shielding, and there's a couple other things on here too, but just look at shielding your radiant heat sources. So, sometimes that can be through personal protective equipment, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But even, heat shields on some equipment, if you have really hot equipment, that's something to look at. Now, the second thing that we always do with the hierarchy of control is work practice controls. And this one can be procedures. This can be job rotation or breaks. This can be training. It's going to be those things that we're doing to try to educate and help inform folks. So, a lot of folks, when it gets really hot in the heat of the summer, they'll change their shifts a little bit, and they'll come in earlier and leave earlier. So you want to realize, if you have a group of folks working in second shift, that is the hottest part of the day, especially if you're in a brick building, and sometimes even going into third shift. The building is retaining all that heat, and so you want to look at ventilation really good. But sometimes folks will shift their work activities. That's good. Minimize how much you have to work in a hot area. So if you have furnaces or kilns or something like that, try to do that work early in the morning so you're not exposed. I think naturally, a lot of times your work pace just gets slowed down, but allowing for that, looking at the amount of breaks and the type of clothing, recovery areas like I mentioned, and then, just like I said, the slowdown of work, the work rate, allowing for that, and kind of planning for that, knowing that that's going to happen. I mentioned at the beginning acclimatization, and you want to make sure, if you have folks that are brand new or we're starting the beginning of the season, there's a way to acclimate them, and you've got to do it gradually. And sometimes this is really hard, and this is really hard, like I said, here in Ohio, because we go really hot and then we go cool down, and then we go really hot and we go cool down. So if you have a really hot environment, or you have folks that are working, like I said, in an attic space or somewhere that's going to be really hot, this is going to be very important. Also, if you have folks that take a long vacation, or they're in a cooler area, say you do work at all different kinds of factories or different kind of places. Sometimes they're outside and it's really hot. Sometimes they're in a climate controlled area. So, acclimatization can be something that they have to focus on then. But there are, recommended amounts and times and percentages that you can keep in mind if it is something you can do. Now, one of the last things along with administrative controls is this training. And so you want to make sure folks know signs and symptoms, how to recognize it, even if, this is a life skill. This is something they could use at home. And so you want to make sure that they can recognize that, and they know at least general first aid of what to do with it. And really important, they know how to deal with a medical emergency if that is happening. So they want to be able to deal with that. I got some pretty cool pictures from GVS. They do a lot of personal protective equipment, and you can see some of the stuff that they provide. And the vest is actually a cooling vest. Those cold snap towels are something that, when it's real hot, sometimes folks will hand out to their employees. Different kinds of shades. A lot of these you wet down, and then they help to pull the sweat away from your skin, or they allow you to cool down, different kind of cooling garments. There's a lot of stuff out there. You just got to look at what makes sense. But, really thinking back to the training part, you want to make sure folks understand, how to hydrate and what that looks like. OSHA does have focus on the heat stress and the heat stress issues. They can cite employers. Definitely if there's some kind of serious injury, they're going to for sure cite folks, but they're going to cite it under the general duty clause, because there is no heat stress standard per se, but they are going to look and say, okay, did you know about the hazard? Well, obviously everybody recognizes that heat can be a hazard. Did you do anything about it? Did you train your folks? Were you able to deal with it? And so that's kind of the litmus test that OSHA is going to use, and then they are able to cite you based on that. This actual picture here itself comes off of OSHA's website. And so when you get this PowerPoint, you can actually click on this square here, and it'll take you to OSHA's website, and you can see what their focus is and what they recommend. And a lot of it's the training that we just covered. Their motto though is water, rest, and shade. And so that's kind of how they're making sure that they focus on stuff. So with that, okay, I'm trying to get to the question slides. So I'm not seeing any questions come out because I know I just covered that topic awesome and nobody has any questions. But I need everybody right now to do me a favor and right above the questions, there is a yes or no button, and let me know if you've done training at your facility for heat stress of any kind. So if you've done training, you can click the yes, and this is, if you click participants down at the bottom of your screen, that will bring it up. So click yes if you've done some sort of training, and no if you haven't done any kind of training. So I see that Bev has, Darlene has, Dawn Rice has, a lot of you have done some sort of training on this. Awesome. Okay, so keep going through that. If this isn't something that you've done, and it can be a short little toolbox talk, you know, there's a lot of ways that you can do this training. It looks like a lot of you guys have done it. So next time, maybe we'll make you do the Zoom meeting and you can lead it for the group here. That would be fun, right? Okay, so I have one question. How does an employer handle an individual's predisposing conditions while also being compliant with HIPAA laws? So great question. You do have to be careful as far as when you're asking folks, you know, hey, do you have predisposition to heat stress, heat strain? But when you're doing the training, you at least want to make sure you cover that topic and say, you know, hey, if you have had a heat stroke or if you have had heat cramps or heat illness of any kind in the past, you're going to be more likely to have this again. So you don't necessarily have to make them fill out a form, but open it up as a conversation. And hopefully if they're not going to tell you, they're going to at least tell those that they work around that would recognize their signs and symptoms. But you may not necessarily know for sure. I do see this as a concern when we get into even hot weather. We're dealing with bee stings and things like that. And so you can't necessarily say, hey, are you allergic? Oh, you can't necessarily say, hey, are you allergic or things like that. But if you have it as a discussion, hopefully you can get them to understand, man, it's really important that I know you have this predisposition or you have a severe allergy, things like that. So definitely you got to be mindful of the HIPAA laws, but hopefully in conversation, folks will be willing to tell you about it just to keep themselves safe. So, all right, so I see that Susan completed the first aid, CPR, and AED training, and that's great. A lot of times, too, those will cover heat stress and heat-related illnesses, so it'll teach you a little bit on what to do with that one. Any other questions, Stephanie, that you see or that you've gotten sent just directly to you?
No, I don't see anything else in the question box.
Because we did such a good job covering the topic, right?
You did such a great job.
I really think what it is everybody's just in shock that I was able to cover a topic in 15 minutes. So, and I even timed myself, so I didn't go too long. So I think you guys are all just in shock that I was able to go that quick. All right, so if there are no other questions, we're going to look a little bit. You guys have gotten a lot of emails, talk about the BWC updates real briefly, but you guys have all gotten emails, and right now, actually today, we would be finishing up our last meeting for the program year, but just because of the crazy circumstances that are our world right now, that program changed, and so if by February, which February was our last meeting, if individuals had attended at least 4 safety council meetings and they had done, they could have used external training credits, then they could, or they were eligible to get the rebate for, you know, this past previous year. The CEO attendance was obviously waived because there were 4 meetings that, you know, we didn't have the chance to have, so we couldn't have expected you to get those done at the very beginning. The other big announcement, and you'll see that down at the bottom, is that the first half of semi-annual reports, which normally you would be getting ready to send those after July 1st, and they would have they would have covered from January 1st to June 30th. Those will not be collected this year. I guess the one question that I would expect to pop up in there, so I'm just going to read your mind for a minute. We are still unsure of what's going to happen for this next program year for Safety Council. We are patiently awaiting for direction from within the BWC of what the expectations and the guidelines will be. So we're just, like I said, patiently waiting, and hopefully we'll get some information about that soon. And then I know as soon as we do, Stephanie will send that out to everybody as soon as we know it. So if you have any questions on this, you can put those in the chat as well, but I'm just going to flip it over to our contact information. So I am, as you can see, that I'm sitting in my rec room, and I am available virtually at this point. We could do video chats if you need. I've talked on the phone to a lot of customers and emailed with a lot of customers. So if there's something you need right now, we can figure out how to get around it and how to deal with it, even if we're just working virtually. And I have a long list of employers. Folks are calling every day saying, okay, when can you come out next? When can you be here? We need to schedule something. And they're on a list. And as soon as I am allowed to go out, then I will schedule everybody as soon as possible. So if you need anything from me, I'm here. I can totally help. Just let me know. And Stephanie, I know you guys kind of have the same thing. You've been doing a lot with regular chamber membership, and folks contact you for stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the information is down below to contact Safety Council. So if for some reason you're not receiving our emails, please let us know. Check your spam or junk folders. If they're in there, mark us as not spam so that they will come to your inbox appropriately. We will be sending out a recording of this. We recorded it, so we will send this out. So if you want to show it to any of your employees, you are able to do that. And then, as Carrie said, we're just not sure what's going to happen for Safety Council for 2020 to 2021. So as soon as we get that information, we promise we will send it out. We're ready to go if we have to do registrations and all of that. But if there are topics that you're interested in hearing, please let us know that. Carrie and a lot of our Safety Council members have great resources as far as connections of different people that could present webinars just like this. And so we have the Zoom capability, and we're happy to continue to do these. Whether or not it's rebate tracking or not, we'll wait to hear that. But if there is an interest of at least presenting some information, whether it's a 30-minute thing once a month, we are more than happy and capable of doing that. So again, if there's questions or ideas, please pop those down into the chat box. I'm not seeing any. Did any come through to you, Carrie?
Nope, I am not getting any. I will tell you, we had some folks from the fire marshals on here today just to see how awesome Stephanie does with Zoom and to see what one of these meetings could look like. So that could be definitely a speaker and a topic that we are looking at going forward, and maybe something too that we can share with other councils. And like I said, if you have any suggestions or topics that you want to hear about, I know the chamber did a really neat meeting with the health department, and so that would be something that we could try to do if folks are interested in seeing the health department's perspective and having the opportunity to ask questions too. So that was really neat. So they're so quiet, just like it's like our normal meeting.
Well,
so with that,
I was going to say, if there are no other questions, what Carrie and I thought that we would do is that we would conclude the informational portion of this. At this point, we would stop recording. And then if anybody just wanted to hang out, chat, you can take yourself off mute. You can put your camera back on. If you see somebody here that you wanted to have a conversation with, or if there's other questions that, you might want to ask Carrie, we are happy to do that. The room is open and available for us to do, but that kind of brings us to the end of the information that we wanted to present to you. Again, look for an email that will have this recording in it, as well as a slide deck And then probably within the next week or so, you should be receiving your Safety Council Awards, which we're so proud of a large volume of members that have received awards this year. So unfortunately, we couldn't be there in person to give them to you, but they come with just as much congratulations as they would have in person. Anything else, Terry, before I?
No, I don't have anything. I don't have anything else. It's going to be like crickets. We're going to have to pull some teeth here. And they're all going to jump off really quick because they don't want to talk. That's what